This is Season 3, Episode 14 of my modular journey, and today we're going to talk about the MAKENOISE Tempi. MAKENOISE Tempi is a 6-channel time-shifting clock. It came in, again, in the mid-November 2022 batch of stuff. It cost $269 US, and the description of Tempi is a 6-channel polyphonic time-shifting module. The manual states it provides an intuitive method for creation and recalling of complex clocking arrangements. And the only part of that I disagree with is the intuitive part. There is nothing intuitive about needing to hold down multiple buttons at once to change parameters, which is why I got so lost trying to actually use Tempi practically over the last year I've owned it. I stuck it down here next to Rene, as nearly everyone else on the internet does with their Tempi modules. That said, once you do learn how the multi-buttons work, things do start making more sense. As with anything else learned, practice makes perfect. But as a guy who has very little time to dick around with complex modules, I get bored or distracted very quickly until I literally force myself to pay attention, even for just 30 minutes, or read the manual, etc. Then I could stop complaining about how complex modules are when they truly are not complex at all. Instead, very extensive and very fun to use. So let's dive into what Tempi has to offer, as I was pretty surprised just how much stuff is packed into this beautiful module. So as I said, it has 6 clock outputs up top here with 6 LED buttons at the bottom, multifunction buttons. It has 64 programmable states that can be saved to internal memory and arranged in 4 banks of 16 with this knob here. It has a large glowing LED screen in the center that shows what bank of 4 is currently selected, and it shows it by color. It's blue, orange, red, or green. So there's a state select CV input, there's a state select gate input, there's a mod gate input with an LED, and then there is an external leading tempo with its LED. There are 2 program buttons, A and B. There are 6 channel buttons for programming and muting. And then there are 2 program modes. One of them is called human and one of them is called machine. And this is where things get a little interesting. So human program mode means you, the human, at least I assume you're human, program the channels. It is actually simple. Just tap one of the 6 LED channel buttons at least twice. Tap, tap, and that sets the tempo. This module is smart enough to know what the distance of time between your taps becomes the tempo of the entire module. By default, channel 1 sets the leading tempo, and the 5 remaining channels are all dividers or multipliers of that tempo. I'm guessing human programming is probably for live play shenanigans, which is nothing I really do too often. And then there's machine programming, which just means take the current tempo, the internal or external, and while holding A or B, tap the channel X times to divide, program A, or tap the button X times to multiply. So by default, states number 2 through 7 are divider states, where states 8 through 13 are multiplier states. State 14 is a mixture of dividers and multipliers across the 6 channels. State 15 demonstrates phase values, where each of the 6 outputs are at the same tempo but slightly out of phase from each other. And then 16 demonstrates nonlinear division states, where each channel is one fine decrement lower than the previous. I don't really know what that means, but it sounds like it might have a drifting kind of effect. I'll have to experiment with that and see what that really means. As far as why I chose Tempi, the Tempi manual itself is quite extensive. So I will not dare cover this entirely here, but instead we'll just take a look at some of the basic tempo usage that I currently use the module for, which is initially why I bought it. I've seen Tempi in tons of videos, usually parked right next to the MAKENOISE Rene 3D Cartesian Sequencer down here, which is why there's a hole, again. And I wanted to know why people pair these up so often. And I think it might just be the fact that this is a clock, and this needs a clock, and they're both MAKENOISE. I think it's really that simple. Tempi does not overshadow Pamela's new workout or Pamela's pro workout, in my humble opinion, because the Pamela's workout modules just do so much more than just time pulses. Tempi interacts with itself in very interesting and inspiring ways. And by that I mean, to get older Pam's modules to be inspired by each of the channels within itself, you have to take one of its outputs and patch it back into its input, and then use that input to influence the channels. So you ate up a channel by doing that. But in Tempi, they just inspire, if that's what you want. Channel 1 is the leading tempo, and channels 2 through 6 just work, relative or not to channel 1's tempo. So that kind of sums up why I chose it. It's kind of a unique clock with a ton of configuration and a ton of states you can save it in, plus modulation of itself. That's kind of cool. As far as how I plan to use Tempi, it's going to park itself right here next to Rene, and it's probably going to be my main clock for the 2 channels of Rene and anything else around it that I need clocking for. Let me get this guy in the rack and power it up. All right, Tempi is mounted. Let's get all of our racks turned on. Very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my channel 1 and 2 out down here to Rene, pretend it's down here in the rack. I'm just going to wire up how I currently use Tempi, just to show clocking. As soon as you stick the clocks in, Rene just starts going. So you can see the lights blinking along here, I believe. With every pulse of Tempi, you can see the step going forward. Let's just say I want to speed it up. I can tap it twice. And now everything is running faster, including Rene down here. If I want it to go slower, I just tap it slower. This is what I mean by how simple it wound up being to use. I was making things a lot harder than I needed to. So if I wanted to just use the internal states, though, I can just turn this knob, and you can see how there's different configurations. So now Rene is working in different rates. You know what would probably help is if I put in some audio. So let me do that real quick. All right, this is CV out. This is CV out. CV in, CV in. I'm going to wire up my VCA real quick. I want to take gates out of Rene as well because I want to control my VCA separately. All right, and now I want to just come out one thing to my reverb. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? There's only one complaint that I do have with Tempi, and it might just be a lack of knowledge. I don't know that I just don't know this yet, but I can't shut it off ever. Like there's no stop the clock button. So this means Rene, or whoever I have clocked, is just going to keep running forever. Remember in my Pamela's workout episode, I just mentioned how I want everything to be controlled by a on-off button. And even if I clock this from an external, as soon as this gets the tempo, it just runs. So I don't know that there's a way to stop the clock, except of course to mute the channels. Some silly little example I can do right now is to just show gates and triggers coming out of Rene. So there's some sound to what I'm trying to demonstrate so you can actually hear it. And that sounds something kind of like this. Right now I just have some noises. If I slow everything down by just slowly tapping the lead channel, everything slows down. But if I want channel 2 to go a little faster, I just double tap it. And now we're doing something a little different. I can make channel 2 go even faster. Get them back in sync by just tapping in the same tempo as the lights are lighting. And so it's that simple to actually change some of the timings. Now that's the human programming side. I believe that's human versus machine. And machine is, instead of me tapping what I think the tempo is, I can actually hold down the A button and then tap like number 2 twice. So now number 2 is going half the speed as the first timing. If I want to speed that up, I will hold B and tap 2. Twice again, and now it's double time. We can keep going. I don't know how far it will go. I didn't write that part down. Get a little triplets going on here. Hold B and tap again. 4 times. That is kind of, honestly, this makes this episode very simple, but there's a lot more to it. There's changing states, there's modulations, there's the way to set states and by using external CV, that you can also tempo it from something else if you want to. So there's a whole lot more to Tempi than that, but this episode is really about how I plan to use it right now. And right now, on its superficial level, it's going to be a clock generator for things in the sequencer rack. Things that the Pamela's over here doesn't control as far as clocking goes. So sorry this is going to be kind of short and simple, but that's really all that I have for this right now. The last couple of episodes have been Make Noise modules. I've had Wogglebug, I've had Tempi. We're talking about Rene over here, also Make Noise. And at the end of 2023, I have gone ahead and purchased 2 more Make Noise modules, things that have always been on my list. Maths, which maybe I have the brain space to comprehend now, 2.5 years into modular. So I decided to pick up a maths because, you can't do modular without maths, apparently. And then I have pressure points because I wanted something tactile to be able to touch and generate gates and CVs and whatnot, except for using sequencers, because the sequencer rack isn't always here. Sometimes I want something just in the rack to tap and make things happen. So anyway, I bought pressure points for that reason. So next year, I'll talk about these 2 guys. So for now, that's it for the Make Noise Tempi 6-channel time-shifting clock thing. What is coming up next? Is something coming up next? Oh, is this my last one? Let's take a look. Nope. Oh, yeah, it is. Wow, look at that. All right. Coming up next will be one more Chaos Devices. The Timizora, or as I call him, Tempi, a voltage-controlled multi-effects signal processor. So, and that will be the last episode of Season 3. So stay tuned for that.